Hi everyone, Arundhati here, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. Since I'm just literally a week away from starting my Teaching Yoga to Beginners course, a virtual course for yoga teachers, I'm dropping this mini episode. This episode is going to be slightly different from my usual format. And by different, it just means that you are more involved in this one. I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions, all related to teaching asana to a beginner or teaching yoga to a beginner. And I want you to come up with your answers in the most clear, concise, and precise way possible. I would highly recommend that you write down these answers just because, when often when it's in our mind, it sounds one way, but in reality, many of us yoga teachers, we can get better at communication. And that's something I personally strive for all the time, to be better at communicating yoga to other people. So these questions are largely scenarios. Some of them are questions, some of them are scenarios that I'm going to create for you. And these are literally things I have seen for the past decade of teaching beginners every day. And if you notice that you don't have enough clarity or you end up learning a lot from this episode, then I would encourage you to explore my Teaching Yoga to Beginners virtual course for teachers that starts on June 10th, literally the Friday that you are going to be listening to this episode, the same week. Okay. And I'm recording this in June 2022. Think of this course as a one-time investment, but what you learn in this course, you can literally use for a lifetime. And I can say that confidently because that's how I've grown Aham Yoga from 0 students and being an immigrant to hundreds and thousands of practitioners doing yoga with us. Okay. But honestly, don't take my word for it. By the time you listen to this, the live info session would have finished. It literally would have finished the day prior on June 5th, but I'm happy to send you a replay. All you have to do is sign up for my email list or find me on Instagram, and I can send you the replay of the live info session where I take you behind the scenes of the course. Okay. So, all right, my friend, let's get to it.
Hi, my name is Arundhati, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm an ex-Bollywood dancer turned yoga and wellness educator. I've built a 6-figure business as an immigrant, woman of color yoga teacher with no business background, no handstands, pure instinct, and the free information found on Google. If you love doing yoga and you dream of teaching it someday, this podcast is for you. We go over everything from doing and teaching yoga to scaling a small business, living a modern yoga lifestyle, and so much more. You'll find interesting, fun, raw conversations along with some tips, tricks, strategies, and insights in this podcast. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in.
So to kickstart this episode, I have about 8 or 9 questions for you. Some of these are related to asana practice and some are not. Okay. Are you ready? I will do my best to repeat each question twice, and the answers will be at the end of the question itself. But if you need a little more time to think of your response, then please hit pause and treat this like a live conversation between us. Okay. Hit pause, jot down your answers, and then press play to see if you got your answers right. Okay. It's like a podcast quiz type of conversation. Okay. So personally feel like as yoga teachers, we should take all these mini opportunities we get where we can reflect on what we've learned and how we do it. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I'm enjoying creating this. Okay. So the first scenario is Ramesh is a 46-year-old man who has never done asana in his life until now. When he's in your beginner's class, he's told you about his back issues that stem from lifestyle discomfort of sitting at a desk for long hours and general inactivity. What options or modifications or adaptations would you offer to him in asana practice? Again, Ramesh is a 46-year-old man who has never done yoga asana in his life until now. When he's in your beginner's class, he's mentioned his back issues stemming from lifestyle discomfort of sitting at a desk for long periods of time and general inactivity. What options, modifications, or adaptations would you offer him in asana practice? Now remember, you can always hit pause as you come up with these answers, but because it's a podcast format, I'm going to give you the answer right now. And if you don't want to hear it right away, please hit pause. And then when you're ready, just press play. So there are 4 options for Ramesh. Okay, 4 very good options that you can give him in a group class. Option 1 is to cue bending the knees in Uttanasanas or any transitions in and out of Purna Uttanasana, full Uttanasanas, along with spinal extension. Essentially teaching the beginner to use more legs as supportive structures to the back. You want to demonstrate this extremely clearly. You want to cue it often enough, because every student and teachers, we need reminders. Okay, so the first option is to cue bending of the knees in Uttanasanas along with spinal extensions, and make sure you teach that really clearly, really well, of how to use the legs as support structures. Option 2 is while doing seated poses, always have Ramesh sitting on some height, a folded blanket, a block, a cushion, essentially something to help tip the pelvis into an anterior tilt. This will help remove the load from the lower back, and when possible, provide supine versions of the pose instead of the seated poses themselves, because lying on the back in supine position is more restful for his back and can act as a back release. Option 3 is teach more back release and release poses. Essentially, these are poses that stretch out the glute, the hamstrings, the lower back. Best done in, again, a lying down position. Make sure you heard that. Okay, make sure you heard that lying down position is a very good release for the lower back. Some examples of this would be Suptapada Angushtasana version 1, Ananda Balasana or Happy Baby, 1 leg versus 2. You can also do 2 legs, but 1 leg would be more effective. Some simple supine twists and a bunch of different Shavasanas. There's so much, okay? But really supine release work is necessary. Option 4, always offer supported Shavasana to Ramesh. This can range from a rolled blanket or 2 under his knees to chair Shavasana to Stonehenge Shavasana. And honestly, depending on your asana exposure so far and your skill with props, you can find some good options for Ramesh. Now, I don't want you to ever think that you have to pick one of these options or choose between them. In fact, you will need all 4 all the time. And you should be offering this regularly until the student feels better. This will also be very good education for everyone else in the room. So next time, if a different student has some sort of back pain and needs a little bit of release, they either know what to do or they know they can come to you for help. Okay, so that's scenario 1, and I hope you got your answers to that one. And even if you didn't, there's always time to learn. Okay, now moving on. Our second scenario. Lakshmi is a 23-year-old who complains of knee pain in general. She's fairly active, but someone told her that yoga can help strengthen her knee. So she's landed in your beginner's asana class. Can you contextualize knee strength in asana? And furthermore, can you name a few yoga poses that you would include in your sequence to help her? Again, Lakshmi is a 23-year-old who complains of knee pain. She's fairly active, but someone told her that yoga can help strengthen her knee, so she's landed in your beginner's asana class. Can you contextualize knee strength in asana? And furthermore, can you name a few poses that you'd like to include in your sequence? Again, if you want time to think about this, please hit pause. The knee is a joint, largely made up of bones and connective tissue. So as yoga teachers or asana teachers, we cannot do anything to the bones themselves. But here's what I would tell Lakshmi or say to Lakshmi. Consistent practice can totally help give you better knee health and strength. But know that the knee is a joint. So the approach we'll be taking is to strengthen all the muscles around the knee joint. These would be your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, your inner thighs, your adductors. And while one approach is to strengthen, the other side of this coin or the other approach would be to stretch all these muscles out, because these are relatively larger or bigger muscle groups in the body. So we'll be restoring length by stretching these out. And if you can stay consistent, we'll be able to help strengthen the knee joint. If you have any questions, Lakshmi, then please let me know. That's kind of the gist of the conversation, letting her know that strength and stretch is what we'll be going for, lower body emphasis, and that the knee is bones and connective tissue, and we'd work around the muscles of the knee. And I'd always ask the student to have an open conversation with me and to ask me questions. And then some of the poses I would include are a lot of standing poses. Okay. And I'm pretty sure you got this on your list. Virabhadrasana 1, Virabhadrasana 2, Anjaneya, Utkatasana, lunges, bridge poses with blocks, essentially a bunch of standing poses that recruit the muscles of your legs. Okay. So that's scenario 2. Moving on, scenario 3. Chitra's wrist trouble her in Adho Mukha Shvanasana. Now, what can you do to help? She's relatively new to yoga. She has never done it before, but she's so enthusiastic to learn and has never really borne weight on her arms. Again, Chitra's wrists trouble her in down dog. So what can you do to help? She's new and she's never done yoga before. She's keen to learn, but has never really done any weight-bearing work on her arms. Again, pause this if you need some time to think about this answer. There are 5 things I want to go over here. Step 1 is teach Chitra how not to place the hands. Sometimes this works way more effectively than actually teaching someone what to do, especially if you notice a lot of people will roll to their outer wrists and have space under the hands. So step 1 would be teach her what not to do, how not to place the hands. Step 2 would be to educate them about the importance of a non-skid mat. I've done this for a long time and I still see people on skid mats, and it is really very risky if you're going to be weight bearing on your arms, and it doesn't give you the full experience of the hands on the mat. So make sure you clarify that. Step 3 is to teach how to do down dog correctly. And by that, I mean how to measure out in Adho Mukha Shvanasana correctly. And there is a YouTube video that I have for this one. I'm just going to link it in the show notes so you have a visual of how to do down dog correctly. But know that each one of us, you can teach every student of yours how to measure out in down dog. Okay. I will link that in the show notes. Make sure you watch it. It's a very short video, but once you know it, you will never be doubting anybody's down dog length. Okay. Step 4 is to teach proper alignment of hands. And again, I'm assuming you're teaching asana. You have learned this. If not, it's something we'll go over in the training. But teaching proper alignment of hands and placement of hands is necessary, especially if you have them weight bearing on their arms. Lastly, teach the push element of down dog. Now, you can teach the push element on a wall. You can teach it against invisible, like pretend work against gravity. But you can also literally teach it with weight bearing. The push work is necessary because we do so much of it in modern day asana, and you can start push work at a wall, in quadruped position, in cat pose, in bird dog type of poses, and so on. Okay. Essentially, I'm saying check form and teach push. Okay. Remind them that they can exit as needed, and that the more often they do this, especially if they don't have any issue going on, it's just a matter of giving it consistent effort, attention, and getting strength and strengthening all those muscle groups. Okay. So yeah, it's like once I had a student, actually recently I had a student, and I always say in the beginners classes that we do a lot of Adho Mukha Shvanasanas in the studio. And I always tell them that eventually it's going to be a rest pose, though it won't feel like that today. And I think when did he do begin? It's been about almost 5 months of him having graduated beginner series. And a couple of weekends ago, he stopped in the middle of class and he's like, you always said down dog will become like a resting pose over time. Today, I feel like I'm finally there. Like now in my practice, I'm finally there and I understand what you meant. And essentially, that is just constantly reminding to use proper alignment of the hands and to use your push element throughout. Okay. So anyway, moving on. My next question is, this is just a question. Do you have a beginner pose bank? Do you have a beginner's asana pose bank? A pose bank is essentially a set of poses that you can use in any circumstance, no matter what, whether someone has knee issue, back issue, wrist issue, shoulder issue. Do you have something like this? If not, I highly encourage you to create one. It will make teaching yoga asana so much more easy for you, effortless in fact. And this is one of the big focuses, or one of the big focus points in our upcoming training, is having you create that asana bank, which you can use literally for life. Okay. Next scenario. Rohan complains of sciatica pain and he was sent to you by a fellow studio member, another student of yours, what can you do to help Rohan? He's a young college student who sits for long hours. Again, Rohan complains of sciatica pain and he was sent to you by another member, another student of yours. What can you do to help him? He's a young college student who ends up sitting for long hours. Firstly, assess how much pain or discomfort Rohan is in. Ask him, has he sought professional help, especially if it's severe? In asana specifically, there are some very specific poses that can help with sciatica. Okay. And we'll go over it in the course because I want to keep this episode relatively shorter. I'm not listing out everything here, but I would also recommend beyond asana to do things like foam rolling. Okay. And while there are a bunch of poses that we can do like pigeon, figure four, shalabhasana, cat pose, I can give you a list here, but it's really knowing sometimes that the solution lies with yoga and some other things together can give them a better result. Okay. Next question. Esther asks, what style of yoga do you teach? What would be your answer? Again, Esther is asking you, what style of yoga do you teach? What would be your answer? Now, to be honest, I won't be able to give you this answer because I don't know what style of asana you do. But here's how I would contextualize it. There are no styles of yoga. Okay. There is only one type of yoga. And styles are essentially brands of yoga and brands of doing yoga poses. You want to practice a form in which you feel like your physical well-being is enhanced, your mental tranquility is increasing, and you experience greater bouts of clarity, compassion, and empathy towards yourself and others. Then your yoga is working for you. Essentially taking them beyond the styles and connecting them to the deeper benefits of yoga. Now, in our training, we will be exploring in depth how to explain what is yoga to a beginner. That's very crucial. And not just what to explain, how to communicate it in a way that feels authentic to us. But know that you want to overstyle, you want to draw their attention to the benefits and ask them if they notice if their physical well-being is enhanced, their mental tranquility is increasing, and do they experience greater bouts of clarity, compassion, and empathy. Give them those measures over just jumping up and down or stepping back and forward and stuff like that. Okay. And then moving on, what is the best position to begin a beginner's yoga class? Again, what is the best position to start a beginner's asana class? Now, I would have addressed this in last week's episode. If you have, not last week's episode, excuse me, last week was Prasad, the week before that. Okay. I have addressed this earlier, so you might already know the answer to it. But the best position to start a beginner's asana practice is in the quadruped position on the hands and knees or standing. Those are the best two positions. What you want to avoid is supine position or long seated holds. And I give you reasoning in the training as to why. I think I explained it in the previous couple of episodes as well, but it's a very significant. The way you begin really matters. Okay. And then last one here. Okay. This is homework for you. Okay? You want to address 2 myths about yoga practice. You want to address 2 myths about yoga practice. And you want to do this on day 1 of your beginner's class, like an icebreaker. What would those 2 myths be? Okay. What would those 2 myths be? The ones I usually use are, of course, the most common one. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. Okay. But the second one I address is the fact that yoga isn't easy. And while social media and marketing and popular media makes you feel like yoga is all bliss, it can be and it will be. But the initial start point is you've got to work through a whole bunch of messy stuff. And I say that in a better way than I'm telling you here. But I want you to come up with 2 myths that you would bust about yoga. And feel free to write about this. If you are active on social media, tag me so I can see it. If you're in the training, we'll talk about this. There's a lot that we'll do about communication and bringing a certain amount of humanness and compassion into teaching yoga. Okay, because I often feel it is so much about poses and posture and sequences, and I don't do playlists, but playlists as well, that the person is missing. You are missing in that equation. And this whole course is meant to be a blend of tools, technique, and yourself in the training. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this slightly different episode. Remember, if you enjoy critical thinking about yoga and you're constantly trying to do better, you want to do more, you want to understand how to be more authentic, then you would be a pretty perfect candidate for my upcoming training. Once again, you are listening to this. It dropped on a Monday. The training starts on Friday. It's completely virtual, and you can find all the details at mindfulyogateachers.com/beginners YTT. You can also email me or reach out to me on any of the platforms that I'm on with questions. I look forward to seeing you in the training, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.